Hello, YTT. This video is going to be some basic alignment cues for a couple of different postures. In the title of the video, I'll just type the names of the postures. That way, if you need to reference them quickly, then you don't have to sort through everything to get there. So the first posture that we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, is Warrior One. Warrior One is basically a high lunge. There's only a couple of differences between that traditional high lunge and our warrior stance. So in a warrior stance, Warrior One, Virabhadrasana A, still have front knee over front ankle. The back leg is behind, but the heel comes down onto the mat. So I generally say about a 45-ish degree angle. 90 degrees would be parallel to the back of the mat. Ouch. So 45 degrees, it's coming off at that slight angle towards the side of the mat. You want heel to heel alignment or wider. So what I mean by that is heels lining up. So my front toes are pointing forward, my back foot is coming off at an angle, but if I draw a line, it's going to connect heel to heel. You want to try to bring the hips around square. Also the chest is square. Now that's a lot of torque in that hip, the knee, and the ankle, so it's not accessible for everyone. And you don't have to belabor the point about bringing the hips around. Yes, you want to ideally square them up. Arms can reach up, palms together, gaze reaching up towards that spot at the base of your palms. 90 degrees or wider, so more obtuse. You don't want to take it a more narrow stance because we've talked about how that's not safe with the knee coming over the foot. So there's your Warrior One. Vertebrae pretty much stacked, shoulders are relaxed, pelvic floor is lifted, core is engaged, we're spinning around. And there are lots of variations, of course, of Warrior One. Arms up, hands together, arms separated. We can move into our Humble Warrior from here. So in Humble Warrior, the hands come down by the tailbone. You're hinging forward with the arms, either coming up, I always say wherever your arms feel most comfortable. So the challenge in Warrior One is to not let the tailbone swing. So I'm gonna turn around here just so I can get both legs. What generally happens in Humble Warrior is the tailbone swings open away from the opening in the leg. So my left leg is forward, so my tailbone's gonna try to swing to the left. But we still want to keep bringing the right, in this case with the left leg forward, you're bringing the right hip forward while drawing the left hip back. It doesn't matter how far forward you can come, you want to try to keep the back flat and not hinge at the way, or not round the spine. So chest is forward, squeezing the shoulder blades together, drawing the knuckles away from the body. That's Humble Warrior. So coming all the way back up. Whew. All right, I kept my little check mark sheet, so I made sure I wrote down what we cover on the first one. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is Warrior Two. So in Warrior Two, front knee is pointing straight ahead with the toes. In this case, our back foot is now 90 degrees, so parallel to the back of the mat. Heel to heel alignment or heel to arch alignment. It really doesn't matter. Even though your right knee, your right toes are pointing forward, or well, in this case, it's my right knee forward, our pelvis, our chest is facing off to the side. Arms are in a strong T, palms facing down. The gaze comes over, the drishti point is over those front fingertips. You want the weight equally distributed between both legs, so your torso is directly in between the legs. You have just as much pressure in the knife edge side of the back foot as you do in the toes of the front foot. What generally happens is the front knee gets kind of wobbly, so they're still engaging the quads, still engaging by squeezing that invisible block between the upper thighs. Watch out for the lower back. What generally happens is you'll see the duck butt, the shelf. We're still pulling the pelvis We're tipping the head of the pelvis back a little bit so the tailbone's coming forward slightly. Arms again to a strong T. You want a long line across. Hands will get wonky. You know, arms will start to reach up and back and wherever they go lots of places. This is Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana B. To reverse Warrior, the back hand can slide down the back leg, front palm flips up, and it is a side stretch. Reverse Warrior is not a back bend, it's a side stretch. So it's elongating through the side body, opening up the obliques, the intercostals, the serratus muscles. You still soft bend, or still have a bend about 90 degrees in that front leg. Now, alternatively, you can also wrap that back arm around behind the back. You want to caution them from pressing too hard against that knee joint because, you know, they're pressing against the side. Your knee doesn't bend towards the floor here. So that's your Warrior 2, Reverse Warrior. Strong through the core, pelvic floor is lifted, Mula Bandha, Dhyana Bandha. So we've talked about those. But physically, you're lifting the pelvic floor, core is engaged, arms long, shoulders relaxed away from the ears. You can even pinch the shoulder blades together slightly to find strength in the arms. Doesn't matter if it's palms up or palms down, not really. Usually cue it palms down. When I reverse it, flip the palm up. So Warrior 2 and reverse. Check mark, check mark. All right, so another variation of our Warrior stance is Warrior 3, Virabhadrasana. See, I guess. Warrior 3 was nor is reverse one of the original postures. It's just kind of something that has evolved over time. Warrior 3 is a balance posture. So you're standing on one leg. Ooh, I have no balance today. And your back foot is flexed. Toes point towards the floor, heel towards the back of the room. You have a straight line from the crown of the head out to that tailbone. Hip bones are rolled towards the floor. A variation is to bring the arms forward so you have that, oh, and I'm not straight. You want to have a straight line from fingertips out through the heel. Don't lock out the standing leg. Always a soft micro bend. The foot that's on the floor basically has toes stacked in front of heels. And what I mean by that is straight forward. You want to try not to have it at an angle. However, does it really matter? No. And if people have that natural turnout of their feet, then that is their natural stance, and you don't want to force that straight line. So again, we are in that long line, hips pointed towards the floor, the chest is pointed towards the floor, right back foot is flexed. We have that long line, gaze is down, pull the shoulders away from the ears, core is nice and tight here. Again, pelvic floor is engaged. Arms can be ahead of you. This is the most progressive, little bit easier. Arms out to a T. Thumbs can be at the center of the chest. You can take your arms alongside the body. That's pretty much all it is. You're standing in on that standing leg, creating a capital T shape with the body. Not the easiest posture in the world, but we'll talk about modifications for that one in a different video. So that's Warrior 3. Strong through the core. It's a gnarly balance posture. So there is that one. Let's see, Warrior 3. All right. So side angle pose. Side angle has a couple of variations. You would be in your Warrior 2 stance, your Warrior 2 leg position. So the front knee is bent, back leg is long with that foot at about a 90-degree angle. For the basic posture, the front elbow is bent. You tip over so that the forearm comes to the thigh and the arm comes straight up, the top arm comes straight up towards the sky. So because I'm leaning into my right leg, I'm pulling my right hip forward while driving my left hip back. It is a side stretch. And you want to have strong core activation here, so you could move this arm and still stay in the same position. You're not dumping all of your weight into the arm. We're stacked as best as you can through the chest, the hand in the sky over the elbow that's on the thigh. Your back it would be like your back is flat up against a wall. So shoulder blades, tailbone, not tailbone, but your hip bones up against a wall. So another variation is to take that top arm up and over the head. Again, we don't change the shape of the chest though. We're still broad through the chest. We're still stacked through the shoulders. And I'm going to switch sides. Other variations, you can bring that bottom hand down inside the calf so it's dangling. Again, really strong core activation here. Arm could still come up over. The most progressive part probably is to have the hand on the floor inside the leg. The top arm is still up. It could be on the outside of the leg as well. Still, chest is broad, very broad. This is where you're going to start to, you can take your binds here. We'll talk about that when we come to our more progressive postures. But that is extended side angle. One I like to use, what I like to use when I'm challenging my class a little bit is I'll have them start here and then take that bottom arm forward. Really nice strong core activation. Usually I cue side angle, well sometimes I cue it from the ground up. So I'll have them turn their back foot with both hands on the inside of their front leg and then bring that top arm up and then go from here. But a lot of the time it comes from your warrior two. That's just a natural progression into that next posture. Just like our reverse is a natural progression from warrior two. That is side angle. It's again, core is tight, pelvic floor is lifted, back flat up against a wall, the chest is broad, stacking shoulder over shoulder, maybe hand over hand or hand over elbow, hand over shoulder. Imagine you have your back up against a wall. That is side angle pose. All right. So from kind of going into the next progression here from our side angle is a triangle pose, Trikonasana. Triangle pose is tough. It's one of my favorite postures though, I love it. So again, we have our warrior 2 feet. Back foot is parallel to the back of the mat. Front knee is bent, front toes are pointing forward along with that front knee. And I'm gonna switch sides here real quick. So our torso is still open to the side of the mat because we have turned our back foot all the way open. With pyramid, instead of having a bent front leg, our front leg is long. We want to try to avoid locking out the front leg. That's difficult because my leg naturally just locks out. So I cue, don't lock out your front leg. It happens. Sometimes you just can't do anything about it. So to come into pyramid, we're basically just moving from warrior 2, lengthening the front leg. You want to extend forward as far as you can. The bottom arm comes down on the inside of that front leg. The top arm reaches up. Again, you are flat against a wall, so you're pulling the left, well, in this case, it's your bottom hip comes forward, the top hip comes back. So we are trying to spin open. Triangle is not so much about the flexibility, although a variation is to come all the way down, but you're trying to create a triangle shape with the legs, with your hip right here from hand to foot, with your legs, your body is stretching open. You can have it clear up here. It does not have to be down to the floor. This is a very difficult posture, so you want to work on core strength. Pelvic floor is lifted. The back is flat against a wall. Triangle is not an easy posture. Trikonasana is not easy at all. So even sometimes when I cue it, especially in my gentle yoga classes, I have them just bring their hand onto their thigh and then slide it down their shin if they feel they're comfortable. A block can be inside of the leg. You're gonna find people that just are hell-bent on getting to the floor in triangle pose. Like I've said before, you can only suggest things. People can take your suggestions or not. They're going to do what they want to do, but some people just really feel like they need to get to the floor in that triangle pose. Don't have to. In this case, my right leg is forward, so I'm pushing my right hip forward, drawing my left hip back so I can flatten out against that invisible wall. So much core strength. That front leg is long, back leg is long. If they need to bend into that front knee to take some of that intensity off. So that's triangle. Pelvic floor lifted, core is strong, back is flat against wall, both legs are long, but you have your feet in warrior two positions. It's one of my favorites, Trikonasana. I love it. Triangle pose, but it's intense for the legs. It's not an easy posture for anyone. Ooh, pyramid pose. All right, so triangle, we opened out to the side. Coming down. In pyramid pose, we are coming forward. You can have a narrow stance, or no, I don't want to say narrow, but a, I'll show you the couple variations here. So our feet are parallel, train tracks, feet more or less pointed forward. The back foot is probably going to come off at a little bit of an angle, which is perfectly fine. Hips are squared up to the front of the mat, shoulders squared. So front of the torso is facing forward, back is flat, shoulders relaxed. Hands can be in a couple of different places. Sometimes I cue them on their hips. Thumbs can be at the center of the chest. You can also have your hands behind your back. This makes the posture more difficult, bringing your hands together behind your back, but it is a variation, so it could be hands behind back, maybe their palms are here, tucked into their pants, it doesn't matter, grabbing opposite wrists, whatever it is. But in pyramid, it is a gigantic hamstring stretch. It also gets into your IT band. So we're facing forward, back is flat, shoulders are pulled away from the ears, core is engaged, pelvic floor lifted. I feel like that's just always across the board, and hinging at the waist. So keeping the gaze down. Again, you're pulling. So in this case, my left leg is forward. So it's pulling the right hip forward while drawing the left hip back, because what'll happen is your butt, tailbone will sway off to one side or the other. Their hands could come to the floor. You're bowing over the front leg. If they need to soften it, bending into the leg. So again, you're trying to avoid locking out the leg, but it is what it is. You want to try not to lock out the leg, but it happens. So that's pyramid pose. Back is flat as you can. Now, you can take pyramid pose from a big lunge. So if we're here in our low lunge, drawing it back, same thing, but that back heel may not come to the floor. We're still trying to keep the back flat. Blocks are a great tool here. Bowing over that front leg. The heel may not come down, the back heel may not, but they can open their foot like they're going to come into warrior to bring that heel down to access that pyramid pose. Again, gigantic hamstring stretch, IT bands, back is flat, core is strong, pelvic lifted, pelvic floor lifted, but you're squaring the hips up to the front of the mat, legs are long, so that you get that hamstring stretch. I'm trying to see the time. 18 minutes, all right. So, squaring up to the front of the mat, flat legs, flat back, or straight legs, flat back, bowing over the legs, that's pyramid. All right, moving down to the floor. You probably all know this one, but tabletop. So wrists underneath shoulders, knees underneath the hips, back is flat. What you want to look for is that space between the shoulder blades, because what often happens is people, they dip down. Scapulas stick up, like you could set something down inside the shoulder blades. But over time, the top of that shoulder girdle gets really tired, gets really sore if that keeps happening. Fingertips, your middle fingers are basically pointing forward. Now, if you were to bend your elbows, they're going to brush back towards the ribs. So what happens is you can kind of spin your arms around in this position. And a lot of people will go like this, but that's really painful for your wrist. That's a lot of pressure on your wrist because your fingertips are pointing towards the top of the mat. So elbows would brush back towards the ribs if they were to bend their elbows. Try to keep a long line from tailbone to crown of the head so the neck is in a safe position. The core is strong, so belly button's pulled in, you're nice and tight through here, pelvic floor is lifted. Always an option to have toes tucked under, but the tops of the feet can be flat as well. If they have bad wrists, they can come up onto their fists. Again, still that mobility, it'll still work out just fine, but you never want to tuck your thumbs in. So don't put your thumbs inside your fists. You can actually sprain your thumbs or break your thumbs if you're pressing too hard, dislocate them, which is not okay. My dad would used to tell me, if I had to punch somebody, don't put your thumbs inside your fist to punch them, because you'll break your own thumb. Wise words from Dad, I guess. So that's your tabletop. And then of course you're going to move through your cat-cows from here if you would like. On your cow, you're dropping the belly, lifting the collarbone and the tailbone. You can tip the gaze up if their neck is injured, or if their neck is too tight, they can keep their head in a neutral position. It doesn't have to be that you lift your chin and your tailbone, collarbone and your tailbone. So what generally happens, those people start to sink down into their shoulders. So still, not requiring them, but just mentioning that don't let your head and neck sink down into your shoulders. Imagine a turtle coming out of its shell is a good one. For cat, it's rounding the spine. You're tipping your pelvis forward, pulling your pelvis forward, rounding out the spine, chin towards chest. So they're all exaggerated movements, but this is a great way to open up the rhomboids, gets into your, just gets into that thoracic area, which is really hard to reach sometimes. And of course it can be toes tucked under or top of the feet flat. That's your tabletop. Pretty simple. Watch their elbows. They'll lock their elbows out, hyperextending, which is never a good thing. A common question I get is cobra versus upward facing dog. So in cobra, the tops of the feet are flat. You still have that connection through the pelvis and the top of the thighs. So most instructors will say keep your hands under your shoulders. I can't do that. I just don't, I can't stack my wrists underneath my shoulders. So I always slide my hands back towards my ribs. I have more mobility that way. I have more strength. It just works out better for me. So it's up to you. Gaze is at the floor to start. Tops of the feet are flat. Glutes are loose in your cobra. And inhale to press your way up. Wrists underneath the shoulders. Shoulders away from the ears. This would be the full expression of it with your arms fully extended. Doesn't have to be this high. Keep the gaze in a place where your neck is happy. Some people try to crane their neck back. It's just not, anatomically, it's not very comfortable. Now your cobra can be clear down here. It doesn't have to be anything high. You want to cue them into paying attention to their lower back, because this is where it's really affecting that lumbar, your lower back here. So again, cobra, you're still in connection to the floor. It's that back bend, glutes are loose. Core is strong, pelvic floor lifted, as always. So in upward facing dog, the difference is that in upward facing dog, you have the top of your feet and your palms on the floor. Same body shape, but this time your glutes are engaged so you can lift your feet up, lift your legs up off the floor. Now, if you have lower back mobility, your thighs might brush the floor and it's okay. You're still squeezing and lifting. So that's upward facing dog. Top of the feet, hands. So those are cobra and upward facing dog. All right. So I will put the names of all of those postures. I don't know why I'm telling you that in the title, so you can easily access it when you're looking for your the postures.